Go. To life, to love, to success, and to helping people live and love more fully.
And to whatever strange concoctions and brews you've placed into this cup.
That's a secret, and hopefully your hairdo won't look like mine when you drink it.
I know you want hair like mine eventually.
I do, I'm jealous. Hey, welcome to my blog, you guys, and I've been interviewing a few very interesting people, but this is one of the most interesting people I've ever interviewed today, and it's Ben Greenfield. So welcome, Ben.
That sounds dangerous. The word "interesting" is always an interesting introduction.
And exciting.
Exciting. There you go.
And exciting, and thrilling.
Mm.
So I wanted to share a little bit with you guys because I have not known of who Ben Greenfield was until about maybe 8 months ago. Surprisingly. But I'm one of these guys that's so focused on what he's doing all the time that I don't really scan the new and exciting. I'm kind of drilling deep. But Ben's name kept...
In other words, he doesn't live on Snapchat.
No.
Right.
But Ben's name kept coming up with many of my students that are very, very intelligent, respectable people. And people like Mind Pump told me about Greenfield, Mike Salemi, who I love and appreciate and respect deeply. And some of my level 4 practitioners said, hey, have you ever listened to any Ben Greenfield's podcasts? They're really good. And when I hear something once, I think, okay, another name. When I hear it twice, I think, my antennas start to grow. When I hear it 3 times, I say, time to go have a look. So I went and looked at Ben's podcast list, and lo and behold, he was interviewing Tom Cowan on The Cosmic Heart. And then there was another one on eating vegetables.
Also Dr. Tom Cowan, great guy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I listened to those 2 podcasts, and as I listened to Ben talking to Tom, I had the thought, finally, somebody who's really intelligent, who is talking about important things, and who is not only someone with a lot of knowledge, but someone who's a bona fide, hardcore, ass-kicker, highly accomplished athlete. And so as I listened, I sensed this is somebody who really does it. And so I had no idea if Ben knew who I was, so I said, well, I'm going to send him a copy of How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, and if he looks into it and sees something interesting, I suspect he'll get back to me. And so you sent me a text message, I think, and said, hey, I'm coming to San Diego for a course in a few months. Would you like to get together? And Ben and I have been having an absolutely great time interacting with each other and lifting.
Best friends ever since. Yeah. Holding hands and skipping through the pastoral fields.
Yeah,
half naked in our rock charging shorts.
Yeah. Crossing all the boundaries and scaring our mothers.
Riding ponies.
Backwards naked.
Yep.
And so I really, the more I've gotten to know Ben, the more I've really loved, appreciated, and respect everything that you do. And it's just such a great thing for me to see someone with as much touch with science and current technology and how to apply that to athletic conditioning, and also your interest in really living and loving fully. He's a father with 2 beautiful boys, twin boys, and a gorgeous wife, and he shares a lot of great stuff. He's got an inner circle program, and his concept.
And most importantly, 7 goats and 14 chickens.
Oh, of course, yes.
You can't leave them out.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that. Nor the trees, and nor the plants in the garden. But Ben lives very much the way I like to live, and relates with love and compassion for people. And so I thought, wow, it's really a great opportunity because we're spending some time together this weekend. And I thought, I've got to take a chance to interview Ben and share Ben, and hope that some of you that may not know who Ben is look into his work, because it's fantastic. And his interviews, even the Tom Cowan interviews, are worth their weight in gold for me. And it gave me a chance to get to know Tom Cowan better. I've read his stuff and seen him at the Weston Price conference, but never really got a chance to get inside of his head or know what he's really about. And so when I listened to your interview, I thought, wow, Tom Cowan is a badass dude. He's a real he's what a doctor should be, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so what a blessing to have you interviewing a real physician. So if you're looking for a real physician, there you go, you got one. And so today I wanted to start off by asking Ben a little bit about his background and how did you get into, Ben, your focus on human performance and the intelligent use of technology, and what made Ben the guy that he is that's interesting to a crazy man like Paul Chek?
You know, this is what I tell people when it comes to mastery, and I am, you know, especially compared to you, Paul, by no means a master in the realm of fitness or in health, but
be fair to yourself.
You must not jump around from activity to activity. Meaning, I discovered that I loved physical movement and physical culture when I was 14 years old, and I began coaching people in my neighborhood to play tennis, and you know, taking kids on hikes through the neighborhood and running up the hills behind my home in Idaho, and I never really pivoted from the fitness industry. I found my passion, I found my love, I found something that I could work in and feel like I was playing in, and there were many distractions along the way. You know, should I be a doctor? Should I be a paramedic? Should I, you know, maybe go into microbiology or biochemistry? You know, all these things that I wound up studying in college. Mm-hmm. But really, physical movement and what wound up being later on, you know, of late, even more of a focus on not just the physical movement of being a complete human, but the mental component and the spiritual component. Yeah, those are all things that over the past couple of decades, you know, since I was 14. Areas that I've just had a passion for taking a deep dive into. So in college, I played tennis, and I burnt out on tennis and eventually got into bodybuilding, which, as you know, is a very, very healthy sport. If you want to live a long time, become a bodybuilder, with the only downside being that you'll have to crap out a straw.
But you look good as a bodybuilder, I must say. I saw your pictures.
Good. You're like a piece of meat who can't have sex. You're flexing on stage.
You're a living statue for sure. I'm like.
And then I pivoted into the next healthiest sport on the face of the planet, Ironman Triathlon, and did that for about 10 years, racing. You know the realm of triathlon. Yeah. You look good in spandex, but sometimes your insides don't look all that good.
Yeah.
And regardless, though, in both bodybuilding and Ironman, I discovered a lot of things about, because my philosophy is you need to spend time in the trenches. Yeah. If you're going to really, truly be able to help people, you need to go out and do the thing, or the things that you're advising people in. Yes. After that, I realized when I signed up for my first obstacle coursing race and couldn't climb a rope and barely carry a sandbag, that maybe having a big aerobic engine wasn't simply being fit. Right. I began to work on power and strength and became a professional Spartan athlete, which is still what I do now.
And what is, so they know, what is a Spartan athlete?
That's obstacle course racing, basically. Barbed wire crawling and sandbag carrying and jumping over teeny tiny fires that are made to look a lot larger on TV.
Is that what all those scars are on your back?
Yes. Most of those are from barbed wire wounds.
Okay, I thought it was fingernails.
Because you're crawling under the barbed wires, also fingernails from women ripping up my back.
That's what I thought at first.
Happily married man for 14 years, so one woman ripping up my backside. Anyways, though, the idea is that I also have a keen interest in technology. Before I really even got into fitness, I actually was, even as a child. I loved to do computer programming and play chess, and I was a violinist. And I had this very kind of like analytical left brain part of me as well. And so when I operated personal training studios in the Idaho and Washington area for almost a decade, and I purchased physiological testing equipment, for testing indirect calorimetry and VO2 max, high-speed video cameras, platelet-rich plasma centrifuge machines for concentrating blood and re-injecting. Partnered up with a lot of physicians, and this is also what I tell people: if you really want to be successful from a career standpoint, you must think outside the box. You must be, as you know, Paul, that person that people come to when nothing else is working. Yeah. And for me, that wound up taking a deep dive into technology, which I've also gotten into very, very much these days. And sometimes the term makes me a bit apprehensive about overusing, but biohacking, is what technology is called now, or applying technology to biology. But I do a lot of that now too. I collect and test and trial the craziest new biohacks for sleep or for digestion or for pre-exercise performance. And so if you visit my home in Washington, it's this weird mashup of ancestral living with the goats and the chickens and the trees and the plant foraging and the vegetable gardens out in the forest. And then, there's literally tens of thousands of dollars of photobiomodulation machines and vibration platforms and hypoxic training devices and all manner of technology at my home too. And I have a lot of fun with it. It's kind of fun to marry ancestral living and modern science. And so that's kind of what I do now is I'm almost like an immersive journalist who goes in and looks at a lot of this stuff and tries to not only implement in my own life, but pass on to people, what's working and what isn't.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I can attest that Ben has the heaviest, if he was a woman, his purse would be the heaviest person in the world next to Penny's, my wife's. And he has a recording studio, a science lab, a nutrition store, a biochemistry shelf, and everything else.
I do not check bags when I travel. I've learned I travel international. the lost bags and waiting in line. So I don't check any bags, but I have a 60-liter High-Leap backpack and this little Timbuktu messenger bag, and I can pack anything I need to survive the zombie apocalypse for months in both those bags. And the cool thing is that doubles as training for me, right? Because a lot of my training is weight bearing, and I do these hunting competitions, so I'll carry the messenger bag on this shoulder and this shoulder through the airport. So yeah, my gym in many cases is the airport.
He was giving me his routine for how he uses that bag in a very structured methodology so that when he's moving through the airports, his gym is in his bag. And I was cracking up because it's like when I pick that bag up, I go, this guy's for real, man. So the next question I had, which I thought would be a good one, was having met so many, after all your years as an athlete in pursuit of optimal health and vitality, what are a few essentials you'd say are first steps for anyone wanting optimal health, vitality, and athletic performance based on everything you've learned so far?
The first thing that comes to mind is we live in an era in which the ability to self-quantify and to customize what you're doing, in many cases what you're putting into your body from a fueling standpoint, it's an era in which the same type of tests and protocols and self-quantification that would have cost you tens of thousands of dollars 10 years ago to do at the Princeton Longevity Institute.
Yeah.
You can now do many of these things in the comfort of your own home. You can look at using a complete microbiome sequencing in a very simple poop in a tube test at home. You can figure out what bacteria are in your gut and which aren't.
You can find out why you're feeling shitty.
Down to the very species. Yeah, you can find out why you're feeling shitty. Your shit can tell you why you're feeling shitty. Yeah. And my wife loves all the prepaid FedEx boxes full of my own poo that live in the fridge next to her kimchi. Yeah. But yeah, don't grab the wrong bag. But basically,
what's on my salad?
Even though that is something they do nowadays,
I know.
They'll do the poop pills and the fecal transplants, and those actually do work. That's a whole other avenue we could dive into sometime. But the idea is that looking at everything from fecal matter to at-home blood tests, and there are companies now developing very simple slap-on patches that collect blood, and you ship it off to the labs, and you get results within a week. At-home salivary testing, at-home 24-hour urine sex steroid testing. You can have a complete map of anything from vitamin to nutrient to mineral deficiencies to what's going on from a bacterial standpoint to a blood standpoint in your hands. And then looking at that data, you can say, well, everyone's talking about this high-fat, low-carb diet, this ketogenic diet, and my neighbor lost 20 pounds on that diet. Is that diet going to be the right one for me? Well, you could go and try that diet out for 2 months, as you might have had to do 10 years ago, and realize a couple months in that you don't feel well, you're gaining weight, or you might go to the physician or do one of these blood tests and find that your triglyceride levels are skyrocketing and inflammation's through the roof and cholesterol's through the roof. Or you could go to a very simple $90 to $100 genetic panel beforehand and look at whether or not you have familial hypercholesteremia, which is a determinant of whether or not that type of diet would actually rip you to shreds versus, say, a Katavan-based Islander diet, chock full of coconut meat and fresh plants and some tubers and lower amounts of fat.
You mean you could save 2 months?
You can save yourself a couple months and a lot of heartache. So the idea is
constipation.
You can customize your fuel to you. I mean, you could say the same thing about training too.
Yeah.
You know, with something as simple as one of the things I utilize quite a bit, heart rate variability training. You know, or I wear a ring like this to track my parasympathetic and sympathetic.
Yeah, show me that ring. That's pretty wild.
Yeah, this is called an Aura, Oura. I eschew most self-quantification devices because they constantly emit a Bluetooth signal. In many cases, like the Apple Watch, a Wi-Fi signal every 1 to 3 seconds. And that signal is actually damaging to these red blood cells that pass through the finger or the wrist or wherever else you happen to be wearing, and not to mention neural tissue. I can place this in airplane mode. It has an internal computer that will continue to collect data without presenting my body with non-native EMF. And then I can download that data at the end of the day, connect to my cell phone briefly via Bluetooth. And then I can look at, let's say, heart rate variability. And I can see, well, it's been low for 2 or 3 days, perhaps, unless I'm intentionally trying to overtrain, or what we call overreach, and then super compensate in preparation for performance. Yeah. I can actually see, okay, well, this is a day where I should choose to do yoga, or we were doing this morning, Tai Chi, or something very relaxing for the body, so that my nervous system can recover. But this idea of personalizing what you do, the way you eat and the way you train through self-quantification, that's something that I really, really like as a way to take advantage of a lot of what technology has to offer.
And did you get in touch with the company to make sure that they have on the instructions never to wear that when you're lifting stones?
That was the very first time I've ever broken a ring, was lifting stones with Paul Chek. So note to self: if you're gonna lift stones, take off your stone.
Yeah, and how much is a device like that?
I think this one is, I want to say, $297 to $397, about $100 to $150 more than what you'd spend on a Fitbit or a Jawbone, and primarily that's because of the computer. And,
well, that's pretty damn reasonable.
Incidentally, though, this when you compare it to professional sleep lab tracking, it's at about 80 to 85% accuracy compared to going into the sleep lab and having all the electrodes attached to your head, whereas any other device out there is about 60 to 70%. I'm not financially affiliated with the company that makes it. I just bought one in Finland when I was at a biohacking conference over there, and the reason I bought it primarily was I could still gather data without blasting my body with signals all day.
And at 85% accuracy, you can still pick up trends.
You can pick up some very good trends.
You can get the information you need to say, okay, I got to pay attention to this without the sleep lab.
Right.
Cool. Here's a question for you. Having met so many elite people in many fields, what's your experience been when you've met Chek professionals out there?
A higher level of thinking, meaning a more balanced approach to human, shall we say, fitness, health, longevity, even happiness or purpose. That idea that that honestly, it took me, the 10 years of Ironman and then the Spartan racing and the bodybuilding, and eventually realizing that fitnessing and being a good exerciser is not what I want written on my gravestone. Yeah. It doesn't optimize the mind in the way that, say, playing the harmonica or the ukulele at the end of a long day does. Yeah. It doesn't optimize the spirit in the way that beginning the day with gratitude and ending the day with love does. And what I've personally realized in my own journey is that body optimization is nice, but it must be accompanied by mind and spirit optimization to be a complete human, to be a happy human with purpose. Yeah. And Chek practitioners are some of the few folks that I've met out there who seem to also grasp this concept, because I've realized the more that I hang out with you, Paul, you grasp this concept more completely than anyone in the health and fitness movement who I've ever met.
Thank you.
Meaning that you are not just a fit guy who's a meathead. Yeah. You're not just a guy out doing Tai Chi in your backyard who is easy to kill and who you could snap like a twig. You're not just some smart guy writing books who has not yet discovered how to have happiness or purpose in their lives. You've woven together all three, and from my experience, you've achieved the same for your students as well.
Yeah, well, that's great. My students work very hard, and to reach the higher levels of the program takes years of committed practice. It's not just intellectual study, memorization, and passing tests. And so, I know you've met one of my favorite people out there, Mike Salemi, who's just an amazing athlete and is one of the best athletes I ever trained and one of the best students I ever had.
I'm interviewing him in a couple of days for my podcast.
Yeah, well, so if you guys aren't familiar with Mike Salemi, you've maybe seen him on the blog, but if you want to get inside the world of Mike and see what he shares with Ben, you keep your eyes open for the Mike Salemi podcast, because Mike is somebody I'm very, very proud of. He's the real deal, you know, and I mean, I've seen Mike come to me with blisters covering his whole hands, and I wrote his workouts for 2.5 years, and I've done some pretty damn grueling stuff in my life, and I used to hand Mike these workouts and say, Mike, this is ball busting, but this is what you got to do to achieve the goal that you're shooting for with his Russian kettlebell lifting. And it is a damn tough sport to achieve the kinds of markers he's going after. And Mike not only did the work, but he did the harder work, which is being honest with himself about when he needs to rest, slow down, change his diet, look into his emotional world or his work stress, and think about ways to problem solve that were productive to achieve his dream as a whole human being, not just an athlete. And so I'm really grateful you are interviewing him, because he's really, I'd say he's right up there with people like Laird Hamilton and some of the greatest athletes in the world as far as being truly holistic. And I know that if Mike married the best of me and the other coaches that have trained him with some of the best of you, guys like that can reach for the stars, you know, and really not only do amazing things, but set a great example for the younger generation out there right now.
Whatever. I just want to know how many Instagram followers he has. That's how I judge people in the fitness industry.
Well, after he works with you, he'll have a lot. So my last question is, like myself, you have a lot of information and pathways for people to take to engage your teachings and offerings. What do you suggest people do that want to learn more about what you offer, such as podcasts and other opportunities? So how do people get into the head of Ben Greenfield, and especially the people that are interested in my work? You know, I know that you're so into like what's current and everything, like right on the cutting edge of science. So I would love for my followers to be able to access the best of you. So how do they do that?
Probably the two best ways. One is if you go to bengreenfieldfitness.com and you use the search function there, and you just search for you know, whatever you want might take, you know, ketosis or kettlebells or triathlon or poop testing, you know, whatever. Type it in there, and you'll get a list of the different podcasts and the articles that I've produced on that topic, and sometimes some crazy laughable videos as well. Option two is if you're relatively agnostic about the information you want, and you just want a taste of some of the stuff that's out there, you know, go to iTunes, and iTunes is kind of cool, because if you go look for the podcast on iTunes, you just type in Ben Greenfield and you'll find it. iTunes has a little popularity bar there, and you can see which of my episodes were the most popular.
Right.
And usually those are fun ones to listen into, because it means a lot of people kind of got a kick out of them and listened into them. So that's kind of a little way to, you know, just you know, scroll through there and download a few, and I guarantee us when you're scrolling through, you'll find something that calls your name. You know, my last 2 episodes were an interview with a guy who wrote a book called Estrogeneration, an interview in which I called him out on his claim that lavender could give you man boobs, but it was a good episode nonetheless, unless you lapped the stuff out from a drinking bucket.
I was going to say.
And then before that, it was a podcast with these folks from a place in Venice Beach called the Human Garage, where they do a mashup of deep tissue work and essential oil therapy and healing music and body analysis to fix people.
Nice.
And also you'd like it there. You would love to go and visit these guys.
I might not want to leave.
They're right up your alley.
I'll stay in the garage.
This little place in the back alley. They only treat like celebrities and pro athletes, and they're kind of opening themselves up to the general public. But that was a fun interview as well. We took and that was one of the only interviews I'd done where we took a few shots of Jägermeister before him. He explains why in the first few minutes of that episode. So if you want to know why you should drink Jäger before you record anything, or some of Paul's fantastic concoction here, listen to that one.
That's Gyasa, that's Shilajit Minerals, that's RR Superfoods Restore, and it's Gosha Reed's Clarity, what's Gosha's new company line called? Adova.
And just a touch of Imodium so that you don't blow out your backside from drinking all the other stuff. Right?
Yeah, and in your last cup I put a special essence called Solar System to connect you to the energies of the planets. So I test a lot of things myself, and you didn't realize I'm using you as a guinea pig, so sorry.
Well, I feel... Oh! The angels are coming down.
Oh, great spirit.
Oh.
All right. So that's the amazing Ben Greenfield. Thank you guys for sharing with me today. I hope you enjoy his podcast. And there's a lot of podcasts there. How many is there?
10 years, 2 episodes a week. I'm not good at math, but you can do
That's
it.
a lot of podcasts. So when I was looking through there, I was like, wow, Ben has talked to a lot of people. And all it takes is one Ben Greenfield podcast to find out Ben's a very good interviewer. He asks real sharp questions, and you got to be very careful if you're getting interviewed by Ben, because this guy's brain is the size of a football field, and if you don't know your shit, he will be on you like a bloodhound. So if you want to hear a good interview, listen to Ben Greenfield. Thanks for joining us today. Look forward to sharing with you soon.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.